Conor Poirier Part 1 was 6 years ago. And, as we're just over a month away from watching these guys fight a second time, you are left with one question and one only as a talking point going into that fight. What's going to be different this time? What has changed in 6 years? And trying to answer that is so simple as it pertains to Poirier. Poirier's answers are very obvious. They're right in front of your face. He's been very active. Both athletes now they're going to compete at 155 pounds instead of 145 pounds, which is a meaningful detail that I don't hear anybody talking about. Set that aside for now and just take a look at Poirier, who has been active, busy, and in front of our faces. Many things have changed physically. His pure boxing, as an example, is so significantly different than it used to be, not to mention his ability to extend a fight. His ability to pace himself and push in a 15-minute atmosphere or a 25-minute atmosphere, largely because of the experiences that he got and experiences that he had from 6 years ago, is very identifiable. Conor's are much harder to see. For one, we don't see him as much. He has not been nearly as active as Poirier, so just that on its face, it's just harder to identify, but everybody has a prime. And you never know when it is. You can do a guy's prime in a very broad stroke and say it was 18 to 25 years old. Or in this sport that's a little bit later, once a guy hits 30, he's past his prime. By example, you could pick those numbers. You're not going to be right. You're not going to know. It's going to be unique to a specific individual, and it's only something you're going to be able to see in hindsight. I say that for you because it appears that Conor's prime is still in front of him. And there's things that will happen that are absent of Conor's control to help affect what his prime is. You naturally, as you mature as a human being, get a strength that you didn't have to go earn. You don't have to go in the weight room or eat extra protein or follow a diet. You just have to get a little bit older, right? Everybody goes through that. We call it puberty, but you see it again. Some guys will even refer to it as old man strength or as dad strength because it's one of these things that just happens in life naturally. I bring that for you and to you because Conor McGregor, I'm not convinced, is to or through his prime. So just naturally by staying alive, if you will, his DNA and good timing are still going to catch him and he's going to get rewards. I feel that we saw that the night he fought Cowboy. You had everything mathematically and statistically in front of you wrong for a good performance that night. You had a guy who hadn't been into the ring. It was like 500 days. It was something incredible where you didn't even realize Conor had been gone that long. You have very meaningful built-in lifestyle changes due to money. Things that he can do and wants to do with his time that don't force him into the gym if he elected to not go. You had Conor tipping the scale at the highest he had ever weighed in his competitive life, which is a terrible, terrible sign. You have all of these things that you can point to that are quantifiable and identifiable, and you have a performance that blew you away. He threw 20 strikes that night. He landed 19 of them. The one that they say didn't land, did land. It landed on the shoulder, and somehow that doesn't count for whatever guy is doing the CompuBox type stuff. So in all fairness, he moved a hand, a knee, an elbow, or a foot in a forward direction towards a target 20 times and touched that target all 20. That is stunning. The one strike that Conor took, he took on his shoulder, therefore not counting for Cowboy. So the official result also says that he took 0 strikes. So he has a nearly perfect offense. He has a fully perfect defense. I mean, this is shocking. Shocking stuff. And I bring that to you because it would appear that for reasons outside of anybody's control, including Conor's, that he just was naturally getting better. I'm not convinced that he's been to his prime yet. And let's say I'm right. You can argue that, but let's just give me this one and say that I'm right. That's where it gets a little bit hard to identify going into the second contest with Poirier what is different in 6 years. Very clear through Dustin, specifically his hands. Specifically, the experience that he has had, he knows when and how to push for the duration of a match. That takes time. That might sound easy. You go, Chael, what are you talking about? I could go do that today. I'll go as hard as I possibly can until the whistle goes. So I get that it's easy to say. But you will have athletes that are professionals, that are main eventers, that are main card guys, that are even title contenders and at times holders that still don't have that mastered. Dustin has got a very good handle on that in comparison to 6 years ago. And I'll also share with you whether Dustin would admit it for you or not. He was scared that night. Whether that caused an actual fear or an anxiety, he was a little unsure of himself being in such a big fight in that spotlight. He was 24 years old at the time, 26 years old. He was a young guy, hadn't been in with anything like that, skill-wise, but also opportunity-wise. He was a little bit hesitant, which slowed him down. Not only offensively did that slow him, it also slowed his defenses down. I felt like he was a little bit more of a target because of some of the apprehensiveness he had. This will not be the biggest fight of his life. I mean, he just fought Khabib in a stadium they built for him and Khabib at some weird time. And the fight was at like 2 a.m. and it was 111 degrees. World title was on the line. I only bring that to you because when I say this isn't the biggest fight that Dustin had, I'm speaking more to an anxiety ahead of time standpoint. He's been there and he's done that. And there's not a whole bunch of experiences that you can get in the octagon that help you. Fight experience is not a positive. You leave a little bit of yourself in there. You've only got so many bullets in the chamber. You don't know how many they are. You do not know how many times in this life do I get to be a tough guy at the right time and moment before that clip is empty. It's one of those things. But I think for Dustin, he's not on the bleeding edge of it. I think he's still on the cutting edge. I can see him getting better in front of our eyes. I can see those wars that he had, whether it was with Alvarez or Gaethje that come to mind, where he's actually getting better. Whether Dan Hooker comes to mind, where he's actually out there getting better. That clip is still full. I'll just suggest for you, even though it's not as obvious and apparent with Conor, if you do just go back to his last fight, which is what we have to do, it's what we always do. Why would we make it any different for Conor? If you go back to that last fight he had with Cowboy and all the numbers being against him, and to turn in a performance that was so shockingly well done, people were insulting Cowboy. They didn't even know how to witness the brilliance that was Conor that night. Instead of trying to explain it, they just decided to insult Cowboy. It's one of those things. Poirier's grossing gains are very clear. I'm suggesting for you, Conor has the same grossing gains. They're just a little bit harder to see.